All right, showtime.
I guess that's my cue.
Action!
Now!
We're going deep, 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 deep undercover.
I'm undercover deep now. This is deep.
We're getting in deep with Axel again.
After the first Cop, Paramount wanted us to do a TV series of it. Evidently, they had a real hard time finding another Eddie Murphy, and Eddie didn't want to do a series. And we also thought that because of the success of the first one, that they'd probably do a second one, and doing a TV series might dampen the success of the second one.
I wasn't surprised that Paramount wanted to make a sequel to Beverly Hills Cop. The first one made between 275 and 325 million internationally and domestically, so it wasn't a surprise to us.
I don't think I knew that they were going to do a sequel until shortly before.
When I came to Cop 2, I was very intimidated by the fact Cop 1 was such a great movie. And I thought, wow, how do I top this?
Eddie, I remember, helped develop the story with us when we were kind of stumbling around ourselves trying to figure out what to do, because sequels are very difficult, because what you have to do is you have to give them the same movie, but it can't be the same movie. They want to have the same feeling, same kind of energy, same kind of humor, yet it's got to be totally different.
One of the possible scenarios that I had heard was that Bougainville was going to Europe to do some sort of worldwide conference of police chiefs. Something happened, and now Eddie and the boys show up to help solve that mess. That would have been fun.
We designed the sequel to either be Paris or London, and at the time we were moving forward and trying to come up with a bunch of concepts that worked there, and at the end Eddie said, I just don't want to go there. I'm here, I'm happy filming here in America, I have no desire to go to London.
When we were about to start actually shooting Cop 2, then they had a big, huge worldwide press conference. And so Judge John and I had all gotten together ahead of time. We didn't care what the first question was going to be. That we all sat down, and whatever the question was, we all said in unison,
Eddie Murphy is a great guy, and it was really fun working with him.
Eddie came running out and said, you bastards, I'll get you for that.
Hey! I got beer. Watch out, this deck is very slippery.
I want you out of this pool and out of this house in 7 minutes. You're still a goddamn police officer, for Christ's sake. You're gonna get us all in deep shit.
Well, I love when you talk dirty. Get your mad ass in this pool with me.
Axel, get out of the goddamn pool!
I told you the deck was slippery!
Everybody was very, very nervous in the beginning of Cop 2. And Ron Howard told me that it was a tent movie. And I said, what's a tent movie? He said, that's kind of the movie that they're really relying on to cover all the other failures that they do. And I went, ooh, I didn't know that. And so, I mean, there was just a lot of people on the set all the time.
They wanted everybody back that had worked on it. So, because Tony was directing it and we had worked together on Top Gun, it was perfect. They were so happy.
My challenge was to make it different and also hopefully successful. And it was very successful. But the difference was in my style.
Tony is a visual stylist, loves powerful images.
Beverly Hills Cop 2 is more of an action picture, and Beverly Hills Cop 1 is more of a comedy.
We worked with Tony on Top Gun. We had a great relationship with him, and he made a huge success for us.
I was the new kid on the block, and Jerry was starting to move in the circles of let's take commercial directors and move them and try them in movies. We worked very hard in convincing him to do Beverly Hills Cop 2, because most major directors don't want to take on somebody else's creation. I was in the process of finishing Top Gun, and they said, we've got this other movie we want you to take a look at, which is Beverly Hills Cop. And comedy was not my strength or not my sort of leaning, but I was a huge fan of Eddie Murphy's, and it was a difficult one for me to get into because I was intimidated. In fact, I was working with such a big star as Eddie.
Tony saw something in Beverly Hills Cop and a way for him to make it his own. And what his idea was that it's the action. It's about the action, and the comedy comes out of the action.
It was a glossy, fast-moving action piece, but the center of the piece was a comedy.
Tony likes to do bigger things.
Tony's like, more is better, forget less is more.
The way he saw the movie, it was a lot of images visualized, and the vision of the movie was far more, for him, I think, interesting than maybe going into a character specifically.
He's an absolute saintly human being. He's one of the sweetest, warmest people you could ever meet or know or work with.
I love Tony. He had more energy than anybody I ever met in my life.
Tony's obsessed in a different way. Tony doesn't sleep.
We were shooting the strip joint scene. We started at 5 o'clock at night. We wrapped at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was going over Benedict Canyon about 7, and I see this guy jogging down Benedict Canyon, and I drove by and I went, God, that looked like Tony. How could he be jogging him after, all these hours we put in?
He's an amazing artist, because what Tony does is when he gets home at night, which is usually 1 or 2 in the morning after he finishes looking at dailies and going over the next day's work, he'll get up at 4 in the morning and do his storyboards.
I don't do well at improvising, unlike Eddie. So I come to the set every morning, I always done my homework. I can't function unless I come and I know and I have a vision. So every morning I get up at 4 a.m. I do my boards from 4 to 6. My storyboards, other than action sequences, I do the morning of.
One very cool aspect about working on Beverly Hills Cop 2 is that Tony very graciously and went to great pains to copy the day's storyboards for us so we could see exactly what he was going to shoot, because he had the thing storyboarded. And he thought it would help us if we could visualize what he was visualizing in terms of what he wanted. And that was really fun. And I appreciated being brought into that.
Hello there. You has reached the home of George Kingfish Stevens. I'm sorry I'm not in now, but I done gone down to the lodge hall. But if you like, you can leave a message at the tone and I'll get back to you at my earliest inconvenience.
Axel, it's Bogomil.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, listen, I'm gonna have to cancel out on the fishing trip.
Oh, man, I was gonna teach y'all how to fish, too.
We established it in the beginning of Cop 2 that we'd all been fishing together and we'd all been friends together. There's a real quick shot in the second one with Ronnie and Judge and myself and Eddie on this fishing trip.
So they called us together about, a week or so ahead of time, and we all went to this lot and put on our Hawaiian shirts and drinking Coronas, posed for that picture.
So it's been established. It's a quick shot, but it's established that we've gotten to be friends over the years.
Which ostensibly was how they had become big buddies, and that was the reason Eddie then wanted to come back and help out his friend Bogomil when he got shot.
He's okay. What the hell are you doing here?
I came as soon as I heard. How's he doing?
If he's strong enough to live through that, still be here, he's got a chance.
Marty Brest had worked through the kinks with the guys and helped them formulate and establish their characters, so I inherited a well-oiled, well-moving family.
We were thrilled to see Eddie again. He seemed very happy to see us.
Eddie shows up. He's full of ideas.
And the ideas normally came from the guys who are working for him or around him, or something he saw traveling from his home to the set.
He comes in there and with a big smile on his face and keeps it pretty light.
He's inspired by pressure. He's inspired by things that move and happen around him.
Wants to have a good time when he's filming and also add so much to it just by his creative process.
I'd say 50% of the time Eddie had signed off on the scenes beforehand, but sometimes he'd come in the morning and say, this scene sucks. He'd go, now, so you got the whole crew standing by. And then he'd go off, he'd sit in his trailer, I'd go in with him and sit, and he'd say, give me a minute. He'd come back, he was always constructive, in terms of how he wanted to move forward. And that was his strength. He was at the sort of the peak of his game then.
You like rap music? Well, turn around real slow then. I'm from the Rap Coalition of America. Take that gun off and throw it over there. Throw the gun over there. If you like rap music so much, how come you ain't smiling?
I'm smiling.
Smile real big.
I'm smiling.
Then let's do a rap together.
Go ahead.
Yo, baby, yo, baby, yo.
Yo, baby, yo, baby, yo.
Say ow.
Yow.
John and I improvised a lot more in the second one than we did in the first one. Almost every scene that we're in with Eddie is improvised.
Things did change when Eddie got on the set, because Eddie has his own ideas. We're always looking for that spontaneity and those ideas, as did Judge, as did John Ashton, as did Ronnie Cox, but Eddie was helming the ship.
What he does is a lot of improvising, and it has to be fresh, it has to be funny, and I think that's one of the most difficult things to create.
He can walk on, having just read the scene, come on the set and just, put you in tears, and that's what he did to the crew a lot. Some of the stuff we had on the cutting room floor was just as funny as the things in the movie.
For instance, the scene in my apartment where we all start singing the dating game theme, that was That was just Eddie's idea, and we thought, this is either going to really work or really stink, but it worked.
Hey, what's that music from?
The dating game.
Yeah.
Working with Eddie, I very quickly learned in my first week that a one-camera setup wasn't going to work for me because never were two takes the same. He always would change, but with a two-camera setup, it enabled you to intercut between takes, yeah. So I learned at the end of the first week, because Eddie, he would grow and he'd build, he'd get ideas as he was doing things. He started to improvise and do a thing here and a thing there, and then he'd go off and he'd have a little chat to Judge or to John and say, what about this, what about that? And so I learned that a two-camera setup enabled me to intercut take 1 with take 10.
In every shot, there were 2 cameras. Nowadays, many people do it. But at that time, for me, it was the first time, and you have to get used to it. Very often, the close-up was already shot at the same time like the wide shot.
Tony is a master at visual technical skill. He really is.
Come on, Billy. Billy, what are you doing?
I've been wanting to wear this for a while, Sarge.
What are you, nuts? Jesus Christ, Billy, we gotta talk.
I'm lucky in this series because Billy really grows more than anybody else.
Judges always come to set with ideas, well, what if we did this, or what if we did that?
All of this, the dialogue in the cement truck between Eddie and I was improvised.
You just hit a squad car!
I know, it's okay. I know the guy. He's a jerk.
Little stuff about fighting over the chewing gum as we're trying to break into the gun club.
Can I have a piece?
My last one.
Split it.
None for you.
There was a lot of improvisation in the second one.
So how long would it take to shave those legs anyway?
I suppose you're trying to be charming.
Actually, I'm just offering my grooming services.
I don't think so.
John and I, the first time we saw Brigitte on the set, we thought, she looks like she's just come from a James Bond movie.
Brigitte I'd seen in a movie called Cobra, and she'd done a Rocky, and she just felt, when you're casting, and my background is painting, and when you're casting a picture, it's like putting colors on a canvas, yeah. So what you do is you cast temperaments, you cast. So I say that the family was great in terms of Eddie and John and Judge and Ronnie, and Brigitte just seemed to be the right cast for that particular role. So she was the bad guy's girlfriend, but she was tall, she was beautiful, and I had a vision about her, and I wanted to make her like a white Grace Jones,
Birgit Nilsson was very nice to work with, and she was very friendly and very open.
What would you guys say if I told you it was a 6-foot blonde working here?
Witnesses reported a 6-foot blonde at the Adriana's robbery.
Right.
Axel, this isn't Detroit, 6-foot blonde women grow on trees in California.
He's right. They're everywhere.
The thing that really breaks me up whenever I happen to see Beverly Hills Cop 2 are the monster sunglasses that everyone's wearing for that time toward the late 80s. These gigantic sunglasses that almost cover half of everyone's face, and everybody wears them.
We have promised to deliver Thermopolis $10 million Friday at 6 p.m. If we fail, I stand to be put to considerable expense and inconvenience, to say the least. So I like to go over it and possibly avoid the same mistakes that were made on the Adriano job.
I was living in Germany, in Munich at that time. I wasn't even living in the United States. And I think through my agent, they sent me the script and asked me whether I wanted to play that part.
Das Boot was one of my top 10 favorite movies. And Jürgen was the commander in Das Boot. Yeah. And that's where I saw Jürgen. I thought, wow, it'd be great if we can get somebody of his caliber to play a bad guy in this piece. And that all comes back to me trying to reconceptualize what I call an action-driven comedy.
We all admired his work from Das Boot, and at that time he was a big star in Europe.
Jürgen is a serious actor, and he plays a brilliant bad guy.
very often they're the better parts, I think, than the good guys, and because very often good guys are a little bit boring. They're one-dimensional characters, heroes, and that's it. They're just good. But villains are more, they are deeper, and they have more, I would say, more meat around. There's more to experience in a character.
Chip Kane, I'm the manager here.
How are you, Chip? It's a beautiful place you got. It's very comfortable.
And we do our best.
You know, it's funny when you get to do big movies, you get the chance to actually talk to guys. Dean was always one of my favorite, character actors. Dean's brilliant, and he worked with David Lynch in Blue Velvet, and I'd always wanted to work with him. He's such a quirky, oddball, strange, but at the same time there's a sweetness. So that mixture of sweetness and strange is a difficult mixture to find in actors. You either get one side or the other.
Dean Stockwell, I knew. I worked with him on Dune many months, and I was glad I had this big scene with him to begin with.
Max! How'd you get in here? Forget our ass. I see how you got in. It's the suit. Nice suit, Max.
I don't know who this person is, but he's annoying us. Let's see your invitation, please.
Excuse me. I haven't begun to annoy you yet.
There's one very important element in all three movies that is very satisfying for the audience and very satisfying for me to watch, and that is where Eddie gets to publicly humiliate the antagonist.
What's going on?
It's Max here. You guys should look at your guest list a little bit more carefully, because Max ain't supposed to be in here. You know why?
Are we having a problem here?
Hef! Hugh Hefner!
Filming at the Playboy Mansion was a little tricky because at the beginning Hugh Hefner wanted to make sure he wasn't being exploited and the girls weren't going to be exploited. But conceptually, again, it was he said it's not it's not gratuitous. It's not just the girls. It's actually integral to the movie, and it plays really well within the script. So he wanted to read the script before he let us do what we did.
Over the years, a number of different production companies and studios have asked to use the property, and we've always declined. But we made an exception for this production because Beverly Hills Cop was such a delightful film, and because of Eddie. And I just felt it was something I'd like to be a part of.
The toughest thing about filming there was keeping the crew on track because all the girls around, So I had my grip department, my electrical department. I could never find them because they're always off there with all the girls.
Hey! Sound the alarm! You got a break-in!
I need authorization.
On the ride!
Fuck! Get out of here! Come on! Go!
An action sequence begins with a writer puts something on the page, but invariably they haven't got a clear vision of what the location is.
Tony's fascinated by the image and by his own imagination.
I take the essence of what the scene is about. I take the center of the scene. Then I go out and I find my location. And invariably you have to adapt the script or the action to the location that you find. It's a sort of three-handed process. So you read the script, you scout locations, then you come back and you say, now I have a vision about how I can tell this story in this particular location. So we've got to change and move and shift things. You've got to change words. You've got to even change some of your secondary characters.
I'm very fond of the heist at the racetrack and how Tony intercut the horses racing with the robbery.
When the writer writes something on the page, the location you end up has got nothing to do with what is on the page. For instance, the final scene in the movie, that for me was difficult. It was difficult not to reproduce what I'd seen in other movies. So, and the final scene being where they're up in the oil fields, at the very end of the movie, and Jürgen's character disappears inside all these buildings, and I thought, how can we get, rather than just him stepping around the corner firing a gun yet again, I put Jürgen inside a car and got him to drive through the wall of this building, and Eddie sees it coming. It was a relative breakthrough for me because I thought what was interesting about the sequence was the quiet before the storm. Eddie's creeping around this sort of strange, surreal interior environment, and it was different from everything I'd seen before. And then the very end of the sequence was where Bridget Nielsen, Eddie's lying on the ground, and Bridget comes up, and in the background was this oil derrick doing this thing behind her. So it was almost, I think what I managed to bring to the end of the movie, the shoot at the end of the movie, was a surreal quality.
Goodbye, Mr. Foley.
Women.
It was satisfying because I just thought, wow, I've managed to get a different spin. It was a spin which had a darkness to it, but also had a sense of humor to it. So the audience was sort of able to laugh at the end and smile at the end.
It's always harder making a sequel because you've been down that road before, and it's not as fresh and as scary as making an original, because in an original you have no idea what it's going to do. A sequel, it's going to open. So your biggest problem is to make sure it stays in the theaters for more than a couple of weeks. So we had to give him that energy which Tony was great at, and we had to give him the humor which Eddie is great at, and Tony. So I think we accomplished both what we set out to do.
It wasn't groundbreaking in terms of what I did, in terms of making a fast, glossy action piece with Eddie Murphy and comedy being at the center of it, but it really did. An audience was engaged by it, and they did love it.
It was pure entertainment, and it worked. I mean, this is fantastic.
I can't think of a better situation than to be highly paid and to work with your friends. It's the best. It was a great privilege.
To bring that group back together is always a satisfying thing.
There's a rumor that we're going to do Cop 4, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to go back, because I'd love to work with Judge and Eddie again. And I hope the rumor's true, because I'd love to go do another one.
It was the best. It was great. It was a really fun time.